Today I'm coming for you, fellas. It's time for us to have some conversations. But first, I have a question for you. Have you had your dose of pep today? No? Don't worry. I've got you. Now let's dig into it. Welcome to the Pep Talk Podcast. I'm your host, Coach Jay. This is the podcast that cheers you on and coaches you up. That's right. We believe that you are great. You are magnificent. You are fabulous, right? But there's still another level for you to go to. And so that's why we do this podcast. That's why we come on every Monday of every week with encouragement to try to elevate. I'm trying to elevate. I want you to elevate as well so we can elevate and be the rising tide that lifts all ships. Y'all, I'm a life coach, MD and DFW, and it is my honor and it is my privilege to be here with you for another episode 27. Episode 27 of season 2 of the podcast, which is just, it's crazy. We are 55 episodes in and we are still loving it. Still loving it. So if it's your first time checking out the podcast, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Let us know where you're chiming in from. Send us an email to thepeppodcast@gmail.com or hit me up on Instagram @_JBSpeaks. I want to know where you're listening from. Also, if you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification button so that you don't miss a single episode. And also share it. Right? Share it with somebody. If you are loving the content, if you're finding value in what we're bringing, go ahead and hit the share button. Tag some people. Let them know, hey, this is a podcast that you need. This is encouragement, motivation that you need to help you get through this because we all need a little bit of pep. We all need a little bit of pep. Also, if you would do me a favor, go ahead and give me 5 stars on Apple Podcasts, 5 stars, and a nice review to let us know what spoke to you about any of the podcasts that you've listened to. We just want to hear from you. We want to know what's resonating with you. We want to know what we need to do more of. So we're always open to your thoughts. We're just open to it. So throw some stuff at us, suggest some stuff, and we will be glad. And if you've been rocking with us, y'all know what it is. Y'all know what we do every week. You just know. You know that this is what's in my heart, right? This is what's in my heart. And I just want everybody out there to flourish. And I want you just to enjoy this life and to be passionate about what you're doing, to be passionate about the people that you're with, to be passionate about the breaths and the heartbeats that we have left in this life, y'all, because we don't have them forever, right? So about this time last year, I did a series I think I called it For Men and for the People Who Love Them, because I wanted this to be an inclusive series. But I also really wanted to talk to my brothers out there. I wanted my brothers, to come into the room, right? Because as I reflect on my own life, there were a lot of guys in my life that I looked up to. There were pastors that I looked up to. There were some teachers that I looked up to. I had one of them on the podcast earlier this season, Tommy Morris, a teacher who had an indelible impression in my life. But even as I get older, I am continually, it never fails. It never fails that I always see a need for more brotherhood. But I see a need to help young brothers understand what this whole manhood thing is all about. And I will be the first to tell you that I don't have manhood down pat. Show me a man who does. Show me a man who does. Like, really, if we are honest with ourselves, we fall short in different areas. But however, that's why I think that brotherhood is so important. Because areas where I'm weak, brother, you might be strong. Brothers, where I'm strong, you might be weak, and I can help you along. And so I thought that it would be a good time to circle back around and do another series on manhood. It's for men and for the people who love them, for the people who know them. So if you love a man, if you know a man, if you are a man, I want you to listen. If you are growing into a man, I want you to listen. And guys, I need you on this series to share these, not just with your old head friends, with your OGs, but I need you to share these with your sons, with your nephews, with your little cousins, because we have a responsibility. We have a responsibility to grow the next generation of men. And mothers, sisters, if y'all are listening, there will be things in here in this series. You can use them too. You can definitely use them. But I'm coming for my guys. I am coming for my guys. And so these next however many episodes, uh, I'm going to be talking about a topic that has been kind of stirring in my heart for a little while. And it's this whole idea of intentional manhood. Like, I want men to understand that every morning we get a chance to wake up and we get to choose. And so every morning, I want you to wake up and I want you to choose to be the best man that you can be. I don't want you to think today I'm going to be mediocre. Today I'm just going to get by. I'm just going to get through. No, because the people in our lives, the people who are depending upon us, the people who have poured into our lives, they need us to step up. And we can make every excuse as to why we can't step up. I get it. Maybe you didn't have, a stable relationship with a man as you were growing up. Maybe, your father was absent. Maybe you don't have the greatest relationship with your father. There were no uncles. You had your mom, and your mom did the best job she could. Shout out to all the moms out there doing it. I get it. Maybe you didn't have the role model. But at some point, guys, I have to speak honestly. At some point, we just have to figure it out. And I know it's easier said than done. Y'all, I'm 43 years old. I need you to hear me. I'm 43 years old, and there are still things in my life that I think I react to almost like a teenager. But I'm aware of it. I'm aware of it because you can't heal what never gets revealed. And I am convinced that there are so many of my brothers out there. There are so many of my brothers out there, my little nephews, my cousins. Come on, cousins. There's so many of us out there who are not choosing to be intentional about our manhood. And I think our families are suffering. Our communities are suffering. And um this is not just for black men or for brown men. This is for all men. I don't care what your ethnicity is. I don't care what your cultural makeup is or your skin tone. I don't care. If you are a man, if you call yourself a man, then this next series of podcasts is going to be for you. And I need you to hear me because I'm going to be unfiltered and I'm going to be honest. And a lot of the times I'm going to outline my own mistakes to try to help you to avoid making the same mistakes that I'm making. We're going to talk about a lot of things. Um, we're going to talk about a lot of things, all with the idea of helping us to become better. Because I believe that when a man chooses to be better, then atmospheres lift. And I want us to be better in every sense of the word for our wives, for our significant others, for our children, for our families, for our communities, and for yourself, for ourselves. I am convinced that there is a lion inside of me that is waiting on me to come in and say, okay, let's roar. And I believe that there is that same lion inside of you that is waiting on you to acknowledge it so that you can start roaring. So, what are we talking about today? I thought that it would be great because if we're being intentional about being men, right? I believe that there is a transformative power in self-awareness and self-reflection. I am convinced that as men, we don't do it enough. We don't we don't do the work. We don't want to hire the therapist. And I know a lot of dope male therapists out there. Um, but I am convinced. I am convinced that we often are not self-aware. And we don't make time for the reflection piece, the self-reflection piece, with which in my opinion is integral to us growing into the kind of men that we are purposed and destined to be. Now, I want you to imagine with me um, stepping into a well lit room where every detail is clear, every detail is crisp. That's what self-awareness does for us. It illuminates our inner landscape. It illuminates our inward parts. And so here's what you need to know. Here's where I want to start with this whole conversation about self-awareness and self-reflection. So, self-awareness is the ability to objectively observe and understand our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. It's like holding a mirror up to our own psyche, which, boy, if y'all are like me, the prospect of holding a mirror up to yourself is frightening as it's frightening. It's as frightening as words that I don't use anymore because I know me and I know what kind of stuff dwells inside of Justin. I'm not even saying Coach J. I know what kind of stuff dwells on the inside of Justin. I'm aware of it. I have candles and spotlights and night lights and strobe lights and everything else on the inside of me because I know. I know what's there. But how often, guys, how often do you stop and take an inventory of what's happening with your emotions or what's happening with your thoughts or your behaviors? Because, because there are a lot of things that happen in our lives, and we can see this by our behaviors and how we react to different things. There are a lot of things that happen in our lives because we're not taking stock. If you give me a line of 5 men, I promise you, easily, 3 out of 5 of them, if I were to ask them, brother, what's on your heart? What's in your head? What are your actions telling? 3 out of 5 of them at least will say, I don't want to get into it. I don't want to get into it. And that's problematic on so many different levels. Because if I don't know what's going on in my thoughts and my emotions and my behaviors, I have 2 sons coming up behind me. And if I don't know how to process, then they won't know how to process either. And so now we have a generation of young men coming up who don't know how to process their thoughts. They don't know how to process their emotions. And so their behaviors are all out of whack, not because they're bad kids, not because not because they're vile, not because they're evil and filled with malice. No, it's because they're not self-aware. They've never been taught how to process. They've never been taught how to filter their thoughts, how to listen to what's happening on the inside. And so they are reacting to stimuli that are introduced into their situations. And they don't know how to process it. They don't know how to compartmentalize it. And so they're choosing behaviors to identify or to cover things that really need to be addressed in here. And it's frightening and it's scary and it's all the things. I challenge you to take some time to look at yourself in the mirror. I don't want you to say anything. I want you to look at yourself in the mirror, and I want you to stay there and look at yourself in the mirror for as long as you can. For some of you, it might only be 30 seconds. For some of you, it might be a minute. For some of you, it might be 5 minutes. But I want you to sit in silence. Brother, I want you to really look yourself in the eye, and I want you to notice what you see. I want you to notice the thoughts that come to your mind. I want you to notice the emotions that might well up. Because again, self-awareness allows us to see ourselves and it illuminates the blind spots. And now, blind spots are those areas that we refuse to acknowledge. Or maybe sometimes we don't know that they're there, okay? But other times we know they're there, we just refuse to acknowledge. Like you may say, I have an anger problem. Know in your heart I have an anger problem, but never acknowledge it outwardly. Then it becomes a blind spot. And when we're self aware, it helps us to uncover these blind spots and it helps us to grow and make conscious choices based out of knowing ourselves. It's a big thing. That's a really big thing. Now, let's tack on the self reflection piece. Okay. So I want you to think of self reflection as a mental mirror. It's a chance to examine our thoughts, our feelings, and our experiences. So there are different ways to do this. Either journaling, grab a pen or paper. And I used to be so good about this, but I don't do it much anymore. I need to get back to it. That's a note for me. And just start writing or start typing on a computer, right? Just reflect. Things I like to think about at the end of the day are what went well, what could I have done better, and what was just horrible about that day. Me doing that allows me to frame and reframe things through my day that I still need to process. Because sometimes when I leave work, I haven't processed everything, but I don't want to let it out on my family. So sometimes I just need to sit down and write or type, right? Or you can even make yourself, you can do an audio journal. Just pull up the audio recorder on your phone and just start talking. You've got to clear it out. And this is a part of self reflection that helps you. Another part of self reflection might be going back and thinking about milestones that you have achieved over the course of your life, the highs and the lows. That first girl that drove you, over the moon with, or the one that broke your heart. The first job that you got that really meant something to you, and now the career that's been launched out of that, or the first time you published a book, or started a podcast, or started your therapy practice, or whatever it is. By thinking back on the significant moments from your life, you can see how they shaped you and what you learned from them, and then leverage those things to move forward into this present season of life and beyond. I'm talking about self reflection. And then there's a third part to this. Okay, so the third part to this is conducting a values inventory. So again, we're talking about self-reflection, journaling, looking back over the significant moments of your life, and now three, conducting a values inventory. And so with this, basically what I'm asking you to do is to consider your core values. Are you living in alignment with them? So let's say that your core values are honesty, openness, and creativity. Honesty, openness, and creativity. Those are your core values. Let's say those are basically you're saying these are the three things by which I am going to live my life. So now you need to evaluate your life based on those three things. Start in the present. How are you living an honest and open life? How are you living a creative life? Like if you're not actively creating, then how can creativity be a core value for you? If you're not being honest to yourself first, and the people who are really in your life to help you, brother, how is honesty truly a core value if you're not being open? If you have closed yourself off to the world around you, to the people around you, then evidently that's not your core value. See, some of us are living according to core values that are false, they are fake. We're saying, I want to be transparent, but we never open up. We walk around with several locks from our head all the way down to our feet. We ain't letting nobody in. We talk about how we want to be emotionally healthy, but brother, when's the last time you cried? When's the last time you were transparent with your wife? I was listening to um I was listening to an interview. I think it might have been the Cat Williams and Monique interview. Boy, if y'all listen to that, boy, boy, boy. And I remember she said something about something that Shaq said about how he will never feel comfortable opening up to his wife or to a woman. And that sounded an alarm bell off in my heart. Y'all, my wife knows the ugliness about me because one of my core values is transparency. And if I cannot be transparent with this woman that I exchanged vows with under the sight of God, who can I be transparent with? I'm locking myself off from an existence. My existence is going to be muted. Versus when I'm transparent, my whole world appears to open up. And yo, if you don't have somebody in your life, if you value honesty, if you value transparency, but you are not allowing the people in your life to receive that, if you're not allowing yourself to take the locks off of your life and begin to live in that way, you are muting your life and you're not being an intentional man. You're not choosing, excuse me, you're not choosing to be intentional with your manhood. Brother, I tell you that being a man is not all about being the lion and roaring. Sometimes being a man is about being a lamb and being gentle. Being a man is not all about being out front, being the big, bold, bad, courageous man. Sometimes being a man means I just need to sit my tail down somewhere and support somebody else in what they're doing. We watch men on TV, and media's gotten a lot better about this over the years, but it used to be the man was the hyper masculine machismo person. Like we're walking around, guys, like we're these WWE wrestlers, like we're the Rock, and we're giving the people's eyebrow, and we're buff and we're the stuff like Buff Bagwell, or we're like Hollywood Hogan, and we're dropping leg drops and just being hyper masculine all over the people in our lives who didn't ask for that, and they don't deserve that, and you don't deserve that, because that is fake manhood. You can be strong and still be silent. You can be strong and still be a servant. You can be strong and be a good listener. You can be strong and not have to fix everything and everybody. I'm flipping the paradigm for some of y'all. I know it. I know it. I know I am. I'm flipping the paradigm for you because what we've seen of manhood growing up a lot of times is very different. And I think that trying to live up to the false image of manhood has placed so many of us in difficult situations where we cannot heal from the trauma of our past because we're too busy reliving it over and over and over again. Brother, listen to me. Intentional manhood requires, it embraces as a key component of its equation, vulnerability. You have to understand there is strength in your vulnerability. There is strength in your openness. There is strength in your tears. And when we're not in situations, and this is for the men and for the people who love them, when we don't create environments where men feel comfortable being open without being ridiculed and jeered, then it just causes us to apply more locks. Now, I'm not talking about you because I know that there are people out there listening and you have men in your life that you love dearly, and you're like, I create the space. If you are creating the space and it's not happening, that's not a you issue. That's on the brother, that's on the man. But if your man is not, if your brother, if your son is not being open with you, ask yourself what kind of space you are creating in the home. What kind of space are you creating in the relationship that would allow them to feel comfortable? Because comfort is the thing. I think about in the Bible the story of Samson. Samson was comfortable enough with his wife Delilah that he was able to lay in her lap and go to sleep, tell her his secret as she cut his hair. She cut his hair off. Took his strength. She created room for the brother to be open and vulnerable. Now, I'm not saying I want y'all out there hurting these brothers like that, letting them reveal themselves and open up their secrets. But I think that's the reason a lot of guys, they shirk the openness, they shirk the responsibility because they're afraid that their weaknesses will be used against them in the court of public opinion, in the court of the marriage, in the court of the relationship. And that should not be the case. Brothers, find you somebody who is not going to abuse your vulnerability. Find you somebody who understands that it's not weakness for a man to cry, that it's not weakness for a man to be depressed, that it's not weakness for a man to be authentic. Find you somebody like that and ask them to help you. Ask them to listen to you and just connect authentically. I'm a part of a Facebook group called the Black Men's Locker, started by a group of brothers, one of them, Tyrese Lawless. And this space, the questions that come into this group daily, some are anonymous, some they stand on their business and they give their names, but they're asking vulnerable questions and connecting authentically with other brothers. Why? Because the administrators of this group have created a space where openness and vulnerability and honesty and openness can be talked about as easily as your favorite barbecue recipe or what you want to do for your significant other for Valentine's Day or how you want to propose. And I think that is what's lacking in the choice to be an intentional man. For so many, there's a fear that we don't have a space. Brothers, I'm telling you, there are spaces out there with people, there are spaces out there in groups where you can be who you are without the fear of judgment or reprisal. Now, in this group, if a brother's wrong, brothers are going to tell you, they're going to say you're wrong. If the brother doesn't agree, there's going to be a disagreement, but it's going to be gentlemanly and in the spirit of brotherhood, in the spirit of manhood, where we can talk things out and not result to calling people names or fisticuffs. Brother, you need that. You need a space. And if I'm challenging you to choose manhood, to choose to intentionally be a man, I am challenging you to find a space where your place is honored, where your place is revered, where your vulnerability is welcome, and where you don't have to hide. You don't have to be a boy. You can be a man and learn what manhood is in the company of other men who were trying to figure it out. All right. So, another part about intentional manhood, and I read this somewhere, and I can't remember where I read it. But I think that it's important. It kind of goes along with the whole idea of knowing what your core values are and evaluating your life and your decisions in light of those core values. Are you living up to those? But it was this whole idea of creating a mantra for your life, a guiding phrase, a guiding principle. And so what that looks like is there are three steps to it. Reflecting on your purpose. So why are you here? What impact do you want to make? It's almost like a mission statement or a value statement that a corporation might have. Why are you here? What do you hope to accomplish while you were here? In the heartbeats and the breaths that you have left over your life, what do you want to accomplish? And you take that and you craft just a simple statement that is kind of like the lodestone, the guiding principle, the North Star for how you choose to live out your masculinity, how you choose to live out your manhood. It can be as simple as I lead with integrity, I embrace growth, I embrace change, I am a change maker, I am a peace maker. Once you have that mantra, that kind of becomes that thing that you repeat to yourself daily to keep yourself on track, because it's going to be kind of that guiding principle for your life, right? Again, that North Star. that is helping to guide you and keep you in line with whatever intentional manhood, whatever it specifically means to you as you're becoming a man, as you're crafting manhood in an authentic way, because that's important. It needs to be authentic. So, what's your mantra? If you come up with one, I'd love for you to drop it, send me an email, thepeppodcast at gmail.com. If this is on a social media page, just drop it in the comments. I want to know what mantra you came up with. Um, I came up with several, and I gave you one of mine. I lead with integrity. Integrity is important to me. I embrace growth. That's also one of mine. I want to know, what are yours? Because I want to grow, right? And I want the people that I lead, I want them to know how valued they are, um, and that the way they see me in the front is the way that I behave in the dark, right? That's important to me. So, what is your mantra? I want you to craft one, take a chance with it, and let me know how it goes. Okay, man. This idea of intentional manhood is something that has been brewing inside of me for probably a good almost 2 years. Like, seriously. Um, I remember, and I think I've talked about this, when we found out that we were pregnant with my firstborn son. I freaked out. I really freaked out, because my question to myself was, how can I raise a man when I don't even really know what a man is? Like, in my life, my I was raised by my grandfather, and I saw him. He was a very hard worker. He would get up in the morning, go deliver newspapers early in the morning. Then he would go teach driver's ed to students who couldn't drive. Come home, eat dinner. He'd be in bed up again by 1, 2 o'clock in the morning to do paper. So from him, I learned the value of hard work. And so I always knew that a man worked hard, and a man provided for his family. But also for me, that was kind of an incomplete idea of what manhood was, because I never minded working. I can often find better things to do than work, right? But I never mind working, and I don't. I want to provide for my family, and having a son, and he's a teenager now, and my second son he is 11 years old. He's soon to be hitting teenager status. It's this idea that they're watching me. And so with my first son, I was so afraid, because I really didn't I felt like I was playing at this idea of being a man, because I didn't truly know all that there was to know about what masculinity is. And so, about a year and a half, 2 years ago, when this whole idea of intentional manhood began to take form in my head, I was probably about 41, maybe 41 and a half. And as I looked back over my life, I still saw areas where I was like, man, maybe a real man might behave in this way. Maybe a real man might behave in this way, or in a different way, or in another way, or in another way. But then I had to give myself some grace, because aside from the Bible, I can't really see where definitions of what manhood is. I just see, I look at people and I see things. Maybe I need a little bit of this. Maybe I need a little bit of that in my manhood. And so, what I have in my life and what I'm living by right now is kind of like a gumbo of things that I've looked, and I've taken stuff here and there, and I've grabbed some things, I've learned some things, I've gleaned some things, I've talked with brothers for hours on end. I've had brothers talk me down off of ledges. They've talked me down off of anger. I've talked with them about my own addictions and my issues and my demons, and I've talked to my son about the very same thing. And so I have this gumbo of masculinity that I am very intentional every day about living out authentically. And here's what I want to tell you as we start wrapping this episode up. You may not agree with everything that I say. I hope you don't. I hope that you want to come back and challenge me on some things. But I hope that by us having this conversation over the next however many podcasts, brothers, men, and the people who love them, I hope that it pushes me, us, men, to be better and to be intentional with what we're doing so that we are raising up the next level of intentional men, because we've allowed manhood to be slandered. We've allowed manhood to be seen as weakness in some groups, and I'm just done with it. I'm just done with it. Being a man is no better than being a woman. There is honor in being a woman. We need to restore the honor in manhood. And if nobody listens, I'm still going to believe that. There's work that we have to do, men. For all of you out there who are doing it, you're in the trenches every day, I applaud you. I think you're great. But no matter how great we are, there is still another level that we can get to. There's another depth that we can dig to. And the more that we are self-aware, the more that our inward parts are illumined and lit, and we can look and we can see like there are no dark places. We don't want the blind spots. The more aware that we are of who we are, and the more reflective we are, the more we practice self-reflection, I believe that we're going to get better. I believe that we are going to improve the standard for what manhood is culturally, in our communities, and in our families. And I believe that our wives, our girlfriends are going to look at us differently. Our children are going to look at us differently because we're doing our best to grow. We're not happy staying stagnant. We want to grow. We want to get better. And that, call me crazy, man. Call me crazy. But there is more to being a man than what we've been led to believe. There's more. And so I want to discover it with you and with everybody else who's listening. Y'all, this has been episode 27 of season 2 of the Pep Talk podcast. I'm your host, Coach Jay, a life coach in DFW. And I am just so happy that you've chosen to be with us today. And I hope you come back next week when we continue this series on being an intentional man. Intentional manhood. What does that mean? What does that look like? Today we've talked about self-awareness and self-reflection, and we dug up a lot of things in that I hope that you took notes on it, that you go back and you listen to. Please, again, if you found any value in this, drop 5 stars, leave us a review. If you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and the notifications button. Let us know that you're watching. Reach out to the peppodcast@gmail.com or @_JB Speaks on Instagram. Y'all, I love you. I think you're amazing. Thank you for rocking with us for another episode. Can't wait to see you next week on the Pep Talk podcast. Y'all know how we end it. Keep it love, keep it light, and keep it peppy. Brothers, I want to see you here next week. Same bat time, same bat place. And people who love the bros, I want to see you here too. Y'all be blessed and peace.